Professor George Magoha takes up the paintbrush. He is at Ngong Forest. This was on Saturday, I believe, and the quote there is that Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha is a man on a mission. He is determined that pupils from Precious Island School must be relocated to Ngong Forest Primary School by today morning. Over the weekend, he joined workers in painting Ngong Forest Primary and arranging desks in preparation for the relocation. When aides tried to stop him from wielding the paintbrush because he risked staining his pricey suit, he refused. Itatoka tu, hii ni rangi ya maji. The stains will come off. This is just water-based paint, he said. And he said, I heard him say that it doesn't change what he is. Even painting, doing that work, it doesn't change the person he is, and that is in the name of the Cabinet Secretary. First of all, I want us to begin that conversation there before we delve into the genesis of why he is doing this. And when you look at these images of a professor on a Saturday afternoon or morning going about his business painting classes, I mean, do you believe it, or is it just for the cameras? Antonio Loch.
It's good for the cameras, that I can assure you. I wish he had dressed up for it, maybe put up some jeans or something appropriate for it, but it's certainly good for the cameras. What I don't know is whether or not this explains or excuses what has happened. But I think it's certainly a good for the optics. Him carrying a desk, you haven't seen the one which is trying to carry a desk, which I think also speaks volumes about the nature of infrastructural facilities that we have within this institution. Yeah.
And for you, Speaker Kagusha?
Yeah, of course, I sympathize with him because, you know, the problem that he's now encountering has to do with the systematic failure that it is in terms of standards in our country. We don't observe any standards most of the times. We do a lot of shortcuts, and that's where we find ourselves where we are. Nevertheless, I think what the professor is doing is just a show of the new government approach to issues. Because I've seen most of the cabinet secretaries now have actually moved from the offices. I've even seen even the PSs have also moved out of the offices. I'm seeing a lot of them now coming to the ground and interacting with people one-on-one. And I think it's actually a directive from the president that you cannot continue now serving people from the comfort of your office.
Right.
And that actually has to do with also what is the top story on Nation, the inside workings of Uhuru's new state, because it's actually a new government approach to now reach out to the people on the ground. And when I see this, I see there's more hope for us as Kenyans, because when the government comes now to work with the people directly on the ground, then it means that they also then get to interact with people. They get to understand what the problems are.
Right.
And in this case, the good professor has had, in the first instance, I think even the deputy president, they had said that they are going to hive off 20 acres from Lenana School to do a school for these kids.
Right.
But going to the ground makes you understand it is not so easy. You will not just go and hive off 20 acres and do a school and then it's occupied immediately.
Right.
And of course, even that was, I think, a wrong move in the first place, because these things need to be done in a systematic manner, in a more organized way.
But it has been a talk for so many years. The members of parliament who spoke on Monday as the Precious Island's top school, one of the tuition blocks collapsed, they say it's something that has been of consideration maybe in the political circles, but why do you say it's difficult to get a piece of land from Lenana School and build a primary school?
It's because there has been plans to make another institution within that school, an institution of excellence, especially when it comes to the issue of, I think, technical training. And you see, that is really in the school's strategic plan.
Right.
And so when now you want to come and, because there's a tragedy nearby, you hive off 20 acres, and immediately you say this is where you want to do a school. And you know you have another public school which is nearby. This is Ngong Forest Primary School. So when now you go on the ground, you realize, in fact, there's another school which is very, very near the
Forest. We'll be talking about that, because there are some parents who've been complaining that it's a bit far. But for you, Deputy Governor, I mean, you are the Deputy Chief Executive Officer of Kajiado County. Is this something you'd consider doing, that you go to a school, maybe an ECD center, which is a function of your county, or the county government? Is it something that you would consider doing for the cameras, or really to show people how it's supposed to be done?
Well, as the honorable member has said, it is good for the camera, but I wish what is doing will go a long way, because there are a lot of things that needs to happen, especially in our infrastructure in schools. A lot of buildings are dilapidated, and we just need to see how best we can be able to refurbish or even put more resources. And I think what has happened in Precious School is a wake-up call to the government, to all of us, see how best we can be able to improve our infrastructure, especially at a time where a lot of kids are going to school, and we are saying we need to have 100% transition. So we need to really think the 100% transition vis-a-vis the allocation that we give to infrastructure in our schools.
Okay.
Yes. And just speaking of infrastructure, Deputy Governor, I have to ask you, in Kajiado, paint for me an image of how perhaps the primary schools are looking like in terms of their infrastructure there. Paint for me an image of how that looks like.
Oh, as I said, a lot of infrastructure are so dilapidated. And this is the reason as to why, even as a county government, we have decided to step up in some occasions to see how best we can be able to improve. But again, we received a lot of backlash from the legislators, Senate, saying the county government is not mandated to put resources to a function that is at the national level. So as I said, most of our schools are in a sorry state. Yes.
Okay, all right. I want us to listen to what the conversation that has been around. You recall that 7 days ago, that was on Monday last week, the Precious Talents Top School collapsed. One of the addition blocks collapsed, killing 8 pupils and injuring about 64. We understand that most of those have left hospital. One is still in the ICU. We will be verifying that. But also what we know is that today the pupils are supposed to be reporting to the neighboring schools. 480 students are supposed to go to Ngong Forest Primary School, 180 to Jamhuri, and 130 moving to Riruta Satellite School. That's according to the advisory from the Ministry of Education. But of course, there have been conversations, some of them saying that it's a bit far for them. Let's listen to what they have been saying alongside the Cabinet Secretary for Education.
Be sure that when the children come here, they are completely welcome. I am told that there are some teachers who are going to come. So additional 6 teachers will come with them. With regards to the standard 8 class, we are going to pay special attention to them. We would have hoped that they come as a block, but even if they decide to go to other schools that we have told them to do so.
The nearest school they are telling me to send me is the Ngong Forest. Will my son walk for 1 hour to the Ngong Forest?
Ukiambia mtoto apelekwe Jamhuri atakuwa anaenda aje barabara? Watoto kama wa baby wataanzia wapi?
All the children who come to this school walk from that area. So distance is not a problem.
All right, so that's the Cabinet Secretary. And I want to confirm here that I was at that school on Friday, that is Ngong Forest, and I saw that the distance between Precious Talents Top School and Ngong Forest is just above 3 kilometers. So I want to pose this question, that here are parents who are used to taking their children to a private school. Now they're being told that the choice is a private school. Why? Because they don't have a public school in the nearby, that is within the Dagoretti South constituency. What are they supposed to do in such a situation?
I think there are two things. I think they could segregate it, and I think the minister has spoken about one of them. First is to deal with the class 8. I think they're the most crucial because of the exam timetable, and I think it's important that something very rapid is done in terms of transition. Number 2, so that we don't have any break or interference with their exam program. So I think it's important that we deal with those ones and help them to transit properly. I think in between, we must think of the other vulnerable categories. And we're talking here of small children between the ones who are in primary 1, maybe up to class 3. We must think about how they get there. We must think about the distance, even if it's 3 kilometers. I think that you must consider how they're going to walk 3 kilometers. You must consider if they're not going to do lunch in school, are they going to go back 3 kilometers for lunch? And thing for these kids would have been to have informal structures, including tents, if that school has space, so that one, there's very limited disruption in terms of movement. Yes, precious talent. Instead if the building, they've closed, they need to seal off the place where the demolition took place. But if the compound has space, right, or if there is a nearby church, and I believe when you have schools and places like those, taking from the Madara experience, you probably find a nearby church somewhere. Talk to the church, put up a tent. We have just about 1 month of school of third term remaining. Right. I think that would have been the best thing to do, have a makeshift toilet, and then get the children to settle down and continue. I think the second thing then that they need to do is to find out alternatives, and I think you spoke about the inconvenience that there would be to put up Lenana. I think there's a different problem in addition to that. This is a private institution going to benefit from a public piece of land. I don't know whether the issue is that Precious is being moved from where it is and being given 20 acres, or the government is building a public school in these 20 acres. If it's a public school, that's fine. But then you have to get into the next question. Do the parents of these private school students want to take their children to the private, to the public school? And I think the last thing here is now to the parents. Nobody wished this demolition. I think it's up to the parents now to think, in the year that we are going in the next year, where do you take your child? And it's time maybe they begin to speak to new schools and find how they're going to transfer their children to other alternative schools.
All right, Speaker, even as you're giving us your thoughts, perhaps I would like to hear your main concern on teachers. We've heard the CS saying that additional teachers, about 6 of them will be taken, but how permanent of a solution is that? Because it's one thing for the students, yes, to do their walking. On this other side, you still have to think about the teachers.
Yeah, one of the things I see as a problem here is we have a public school which is within the vicinity, this Gong Forest, and this school, we are told, doesn't have students. In fact, it is operating with very, very few pupils. And most of the students then opt to go to a private school. Why is it so? It's probably because the management of this public institution is not as good. But then when you look at the infrastructure where students are being put, it's even worse than this public school. Now, I think the government will definitely then need to address that issue. And I want to believe by taking more teachers, they are addressing that problem. So that then you have more teachers to receive the new pupils now who join this school. But that does not need to stop there. They also need to do the infrastructure, as now what the CS is doing. Right. But I'm afraid we have the CDF. And CDF has only one function. Actually, it has 2 functions only now. It has the school infrastructure, that is primary school infrastructure, and the security infrastructure. And I would wonder why a constituency with 100 million is not able to maintain all its schools. I know where I come from, Mukurweini constituency, and any person who comes from Mukurweini, they will tell you. All the schools have been upgraded to a very, very good standard, or at least most of them. And even those ones which are not upgraded, it's just about a matter of classrooms. You find that like 5 classrooms have already been redone afresh. And sometimes I think if that kind of investment is done continuously, then in the next, maybe by 2022, people in that constituency will need to probably get somewhere else to take their CDF, because that has been addressed. Right. Probably to buy school buses for those primary schools. Now, the issue of distance, really, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's a problem at all. I would actually support the minister. When you go to a school like Hospital Hill Primary School, just here, you'll find that school has, I think, over 3,000 students. And most of these students come from all over this city because it's a good school. Right. When you go at the field in the evening, you will find very, very many yellow vans. And these yellow vans don't belong to the school. They belong to operators who do school transport. They are registered by the school, and then they are authorized, and then they are allowed to come and pick kids. And that is the way these parents need to look at it. If really they had finances to take their kids to a private school, I'm sure they can be able to raise some little money to transport their kids to this public school that is a Gong Forest.
Right. Let me rope in, Deputy Governor. In Kajiado, I'm sure there are some primary school-going children who have to do the entire walking, some even more than 3 kilometers, Deputy Governor. Sure. How do we balance between, yes, providing free primary and secondary education, but at the expense of making sure that we are balancing it with quality? I say this because you will find that there are random places, as there is in Kajiado, if you confirm for us, where you find that, yes, there's a community within a certain area, and a school, a mud school is uprooted within that to serve that community. But kids have to walk longer distances to get to that same school. That same school is seated probably under a tree, so there's a lot of environmental risk and disasters that you also have to think about it. You have to consider all this at the expense of offering education. But how do we strike that balance of, yes, saying that you can go to school and providing education, especially in those marginalized areas, while maintaining the quality of it?
Well, I think in this case, number one, well, it is good to find a quick solution for the problem at hand. The step that the CS has taken. But number one, I should ask myself, where we are taking these children, are we not compromising? Number one, we have to have in mind the space, classroom space. We're taking children from one school to another school that already has got children. What is this? I mean, what is the capacity that a classroom can hold? In my view, I think we will be compromising on the quality that you're giving of education that you're giving to these children. And in my view, I would have supported the idea of the honorable member that the government can have done some temporary structures because there is also another vulnerable group that I'm much concerned, being a leader of a county, and that is the ECD kids.
Deputy Governor, is there an inspection happening in Kajiado to look at the schools there, whether some are and whether buildings, especially after what happened here in Nairobi?
I'm not aware unless the national government is doing that, and I don't have information about it.
As we go to break, I just wanted to point out that the Gong Forest Primary School that you're talking about, in terms of capacity, number of pupils currently, it has 630. It's a double stream school, especially for the upper classes from class 6, 7, and 8. But for class 4, they have had to combine their class. It's the size of population there is more than 80. We are talking about 6 vacant classes, and these are the classes that these pupils from Gong Forest, from Precious Talents, will be going to occupy. They have 13 teachers, so they are overstretched. They don't have sufficient teachers, and that's why when I was speaking to one of the senior teachers there, they were telling us that they were hoping that the ministry would also deploy some teachers, and what you hear the cabinet secretary saying is that there will be 6 teachers to accompany these learners as they move to that school.